didn't look as good as they have been.
True.
And Auburn had a chance to win this, and I don't see why Auburn is. I mean, I know Gus has got a big buyout and everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is just atrocious. I mean, I'm a big Alabama fan, but I mean, even as an Alabama fan, it's like the Iron Bowl is not even like this year wasn't even very interesting because of the fact that Auburn is garbage.
True. Well, what are your expectations for Auburn football? I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just asking the question because I agree with much of what you have to say. Gus Malzahn, since he took that program to the BCS championship game in 2013, is, let me do the math real quick, 31. He is 31-26 in the SEC. 31-26. You would expect Auburn to be much better than that.
Yeah, well, I mean, here in the state of Alabama, football is a part of the culture here, and when I mean, as an Alabama fan, I want Auburn to be good until they play Alabama because it makes the Iron Bowl interesting.
Absolutely,
and it makes the SEC, the conference, the West, particularly, it makes it more interesting to see who's going to go to the SEC championship every year.
Yep. Well, I'm going to agree, Hunter, with a lot that you had to say, but just because I'm the guy that I am, I'm going to push back on some of it. Just makes it a more interesting discussion, and because I'd like to raise a few points. So you do understand that Gus Malzahn has a better record against Nick Saban than the other top teams in the West. Better than LSU, better than Texas A&M.
Yeah, I mean, that's because, that's just a different dynamic of the game. I mean, when you get Alabama versus Auburn, it don't matter who's the coach. It's always going to be back and forth between the two teams because it's such a big rivalry and the emotions are high in these games. And when the emotions are high, anybody can win on any given Iron Bowl.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think Alabama's been dominant in the seasons they've been dominant when Auburn's not been real good, just like this year. This year's a perfect example. Alabama was a 25-26 point favorite. Would they win by 29? The rivalry didn't play that much into it. It wasn't like, oh, throw out the records. We don't know what's going to happen. We pretty much did know what was going to happen.
No, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying, okay, for example, when Nick Marshall was at Auburn and they had that big comeback against Alabama.
Yep.
I mean, nobody expected them to be able to come back like that. And so there's a little bit of I think there's a little bit truth to what I'm saying, not to the extent to the most extreme.
Oh, I do too.
But
I do
there
too.
is some truth in that. Let me ask you a question though on a different topic, right quick.
Yep.
This frustrates me as an Alabama fan, as an SEC guy.
Yeah.
Is it your perception? Because I've talked to people who in my community and friends of mine who are big college football fans, and I'm a college football fan in general. I mean, I'm not just an Alabama or an SEC guy.
Yep.
But it seems to me that the team that like ESPN and other teams and other outlets just seem to love Ohio State. And it just seems in the media loves Ohio State, and I cannot figure out why.
Okay. I see some truth in what you're saying. I think some Ohio State fans, so we do an Ohio State show here every week with 3 Ohio State beat writers, and they would tell you that ESPN and other main media outlets love the SEC, and because they built an SEC network, that they are biased toward the SEC. So let's all understand that, and I definitely, Hunter, appreciate that even as an Alabama fan, you're trying to be objective and neutral. And so I appreciate those fans that love their team with all that's within them, but still are able to step back and say, I want to be objective here and look at it. I think that there's a lot of Ohio State people, a lot of former players that have made their way into the media. So if you look at Kirk Herbstreit, so he's the #1 analyst at ESPN, former Ohio State guy. You've got Joey Galloway, one of their main guys, Ohio State guy. Chris Spielman was there for years and years and years at ESPN and ABC, Ohio State guy. So there's a lot of Ohio State players that have made their way to prominent positions in the media. So I think that might have something to do with it. Another thing might be that aside from the top schools in the SEC, and aside from, I guess, Clemson now, although Clemson's still not, they don't attract great TV ratings. There's still a newcomer to it. It's mostly the top of the SEC, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan get huge, huge TV numbers. And Ohio State's part of that. Ohio State gets if you look at the top 10 rated TV games every year, they're all Ohio State, Michigan, and SEC related, all of them. And when I say all of them, one year it might be 9 out of 10, but it's basically all of them. So I think there's a favoritism toward the teams that people want to talk to, want to talk about, want to watch. I had a sit down with the head of ESPN Digital Media. This was maybe a year ago. And because of some things that I was offering them, and I let them know that if you go to even some huge football programs, take Virginia Tech, it's a top 25, 30 football program. I'm not talking about this particular team, but they've got a big following. They could make a lot of money. But if you go to the Virginia Tech football page on ESPN, you don't see Virginia Tech covered. They don't. And he basically told me flat out, there's about 5 schools we cover that we care about. And they move the needle and they drive all our clicks. And it's Alabama, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Michigan, Texas, few others tacked on. And that's about it. And we don't care about anybody else. There has to be a major story.
And in the last few years, it's been Clemson tagged on that list because Clemson's been a program of prominence.
Yeah.
Within the last 5 or 6 years, and I don't know, it's just sort of frustrating to me. And I know it's not, and I know I'm biased a little bit because I'm an Alabama fan, and I understand that. But on the same thing, just like you said, a lot of the guys in the media come from Ohio State. I think one of the most hilarious takes I've heard in the last few years is, in particular, is Skip Bayless said that Jim Harbaugh is a far better coach than Nick Saban. I don't know if you've ever seen that clip of him trying to make that argument.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But that is one of the most horrible takes I've ever heard ever in sports.
It is. But some of the people that you mention, and because of the shows that they've created, they are looking for sensationalism, and they're looking for crazy opinions. And sometimes, I heard this was many years ago, and I'm going to let you go after this because we've got a guest coming on here. But many years ago, there was a huge college. It was, near the end of November, and ESPN was doing one of its, championship drive kind of shows where, there's a big debate over who should be the playoff teams. This was, 5-6 years ago. It might have been even predated the playoff. It might have been a BCS conversation. And I remember Kirk Herbstreit actually letting everybody know, he was like, because they gave him Georgia to argue for, and he didn't want to argue for, and he basically, in the middle of his conversation and argument with whomever, Pollock or somebody else, he was like, you know what? They gave me Georgia to argue. I don't believe Georgia should be in this. And he basically let it out that I was told to argue Georgia's point, even though I don't believe that they should be part of this. So a lot of it's just planned for clicks and for debate and to get people riled up, unfortunately. Now here, everything I say, I believe. I don't do it just to be sensational. Sometimes it's boring because it's what everybody else thinks, but if that's what I believe, then that's what I'm going to tell you. Other times it's going to be way outside the box and people are like, oh, you're just trying to get clicks. No, I'm just stating what I believe. And sometimes it's very mainstream and other times it's way outside the box. It's just whatever I believe is the truth and is logical.